Unity lies in diversity, and the European Union today stands as a symbol of this. It is clearer now more than ever before that we all must stand, regardless of our origin, united on this planet in order to truly achieve peace. Today on our episode, we have a special guest who works towards achieving such peace. Please welcome the EU Ambassador to Nepal, Ambassador Veronique Lorenzo.
Thank you very much.
Yes, this year marks the 50th year, I believe, since the European Union and Nepal have been celebrating diplomatic relations. With the slogan, growing stronger together, and I truly believe that unity in diversity is one of those expressions that the European Union and Nepali people share together in common. The slogan perfectly describes how the EU has been supporting Nepal over the years, how they have been supporting us in our development as a country. And as a nation, we couldn't be more grateful for this. So for the first question I would like to ask is, could you tell us a bit about some of the more recent projects that the EU has been doing to help Nepal as a country that is developing?
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. And absolutely, together in diversity is the European Union's motto, because like Nepal, we have this incredible richness of cultures and languages, religions. And while we can be very different from Northern Europe to the south, to the tip of Portugal, from the extreme west to the extreme east, the European Union has evolved over the years into a political project. So the first thing I would like to say is that Nepal, the European Union is not only a development actor in Nepal. It is a political actor, and over the last 20 years, our relations have expanded to cover a broad range of dimensions. In Nepal, it is true that our development cooperation is a large share of our relations, and we have to accompany the evolution of Nepal, also the evolution in the European Union. Let me perhaps summarize it in three pillars that we have in terms of support to Nepal's development. The first one is around green growth. This is very much, you know, that the Green Deal is very much at the core not only of our sectoral but of our political priorities in the European Union. We must transition to a green economy. It's a matter of survival. And Nepal has this incredible potential to generate green growth through hydropower, that's the best known sector, through solar as well. And there the European Union has come in support of these investments. And they look both ways. They look internally to Nepal to manage to connect all people. This is the first priority. After all, it's also Nepal's priority. In the longer term, Nepal has also the potential to export electricity.
The hydropower.
Absolutely, and to gain a lot of foreign currency from that. So this is a trend that we have been getting into and very much look forward to supporting in coming years. The second big pillar where we support Nepal is education. And it has been for the last, more than I can count, for the last 25 years. Education really is the foundation of a society.
I agree.
right? And the European Union has been very involved in supporting basic education. I think that the achievements are Nepali achievements. And over the last 20 years, you've managed to increase access to education, and especially girls' access to education. And girls, we'll talk about it later, but this is women and girls are very much a focus of our attention.
Yes.
So access has seen a lot of progress, but there's still work to be done in improving the quality. And this is what we will be focusing on in the coming years. Teacher training, managing to improve the quality of the teaching,
yes,
but also of the learning,
yes,
of course. We will also, in education, we have also been involved in supporting the vocational training. And this again, we have plans coming up, because it's also the basis for young people to be employable, directly employable. And this is another, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but this is a big issue we need to address in Nepal, is how to create more employment opportunities. Yes. And the third big pillar of our support is around governance, around strengthening institutions. And this is particularly important after the passing of the 2015 federal constitution, that really creates a series of new structures that were not known before in a very unitary system that Nepal was until 2015. There's a need to capacitate the local levels in what they need to do. How does the public sector deliver more and better to its citizens? And this is the support we bring. Of course, together we also have a number of projects in the areas of human rights, in the areas of rule of law. This governance block, I would say, is again something that is very much at the core of the European Union, because this is how we developed.
Yes. One of the projects that I recently learned about, I understand that the EU has been funding a UN project with regards to earthquake preparedness in Nepal. As you already know, due to the bad weather we have been having lately, several areas have been affected by floods. That being said, are there any measures being considered to counteract disasters related to floods and landslides within such projects like the earthquake preparedness? Or are you aware of any other projects that the EU will likely be heading towards to help the people who are currently suffering in Nepal because of floods?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for the question. And this, perhaps I should have mentioned the humanitarian assistance also in what we do. We have our humanitarian office, ECHO, that springs into action whenever there is a disaster, natural or otherwise. The response to the 2015 earthquake, the response to COVID has been, we have accompanied Nepal in responding to, in giving relief to its citizens. But when there's not a crisis, because Nepal is so vulnerable especially to natural disasters, and these are earthquakes, but as you mentioned, also floods and landslides, there is a continuous work to improve the preparedness of, again, the public sector to respond to these crises. And we have been doing work with the provinces, with the municipalities in 3 provinces to help to create capacities for the Nepali administration, the disaster management administration, to respond.
Yes. I would like to ask your opinion with regards to the best way governments in general overall can react quickly to disasters such as floods, earthquakes, tornadoes. There are many natural disasters occurring worldwide today thanks to climate change. What advice would you give to just governance in general to help better tackle such disasters?
Let me give you a very precise example. I've seen in the recent floods, I have seen a lot of criticism of how the government had responded, that they had not been able to get a helicopter in to rescue people. I have to say I completely disagree with these criticisms. I have seen the National Disaster Relief at the NDRRMA administration and how they have alerted the population since Wednesday, perhaps before, but I became aware of it on Wednesday, and advised people not to stay in safe areas, not to move, buses not to move in the roads that would be subject to landslides. So the first very important thing is preparedness, is communication to the citizens, is alerting that a situation that may not come to pass is a risk.
Yes.
And this is what we have in our countries as well. We have these alert systems. Now, it is up to the citizens to respond and to follow advice.
Yes.
You know, very, very much so. The second important thing, of course, in the case of a disaster, is that prepositioning of staff, of equipment, of materials, and there again, I think, you know, these floods were so quick and so unexpected. I'm impressed by the response that has been given. The government mobilized 20,000 people for search and rescue operations. There's a very interesting system of volunteers across the country that can be alerted in case we know that a crisis is coming. These, I would say, are the two most important things.
Yes.
And the third I would add is this awareness that I think still needs to be created in citizens' minds.
Yes.
That this is not a joke, that these crises will get worse over time, that climate change is upon us, and Nepal is suffering disproportionately from it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's our individual responsibility to make stops at home, to make sure we're in safe places, to have a family plan. You know, even here in the delegation, this is the kind we prepare our staff for the cases of possible crisis. So this individual awareness, individual responsibility is very important.
Would you say that education plays a big role in this, in spreading awareness about this? And if so, should the government include any policies with regards to educating students with regards to disaster preparedness? Should that be something in the curriculum?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you know, experience is the hard way to learn lessons.
Yes.
But increasingly, and I think we do this as part of our programs, include disaster preparedness in school curricula.
Mm-hmm.
From an early age, people need to be very much aware of these risks.
Yes. On the topic of the effects of climate change, are there any specific projects that the EU has been doing recently to tackle the climate change's impact on?
Well, as I said, I think our work on energy is the main avenue to address climate change. It's you know, it's how do we ensure a green future?
Yes.
And it has to be, it's not just about mitigation, it is about, you know, changing the way we do things to function in future. It's true that there are many things that Nepal cannot do because it's in such a vulnerable situation, and it suffers disproportionately from climate change. But there are many things Nepal can do.
Could you give us examples?
It can transition to green energy, and they're doing it, big time. The investments in hydro, there should be more investments in solar, will allow that transition, will lessen the carbon footprint. There are other things on which some of them were working on, others were not. One is the whole issue of waste.
Yes.
And we have a number of small projects also to create awareness that the waste has many negative impacts. It will affect Nepal and Nepal's potential as a tourist destination.
Yes.
Because tourists don't want to see rubbish all around. That's a big problem. But beyond that, there are very serious health hazards associated with the waste. This is something we're doing at small scale. This is something I would love to expand 100-fold.
And I personally also believe that this is something we urgently need. As you're aware, because of the floods, a lot of the trash that has been disposed in the rivers is now back to the land and entering many people's homes. I believe that if we do not dispose of these garbage wastes, we are likely to see the rise of diseases within our cities. So yes, I believe that we should expand such projects that the EU is doing.
Absolutely, and this is about, I've asked, because I've only been here for a year, so I asked, what happened in the past? And I've heard of many incredibly valuable initiatives of waste collection, of garbage collection, which is great.
Yes.
But it doesn't do anything if you don't teach people not to throw waste.
Exactly.
That it's bad for them, it's bad for their families, it's bad for the economy, it's bad for the environment. This is something that can be learned from the European. I have a Spanish father.
Yes.
And in Spain in the 70s there were a lot of illegal discharges of waste. It was really terrible in some cases, but with education, with awareness, with the understanding that this would be very lethal to the tourist economy, and Spain relies a lot on tourism, the situation has changed. In 20 years, they've managed to recreate a beautiful environment.
That sounds incredible.
It can be done.
Yes.
But it's an effort. Everybody needs to be aware of it and engaged into this effort. And same thing, we need to teach this in the schools.
Yes, of course. Speaking of education, I actually read an article that you had written a bit back in August about youth empowerment. You specifically mentioned the Youth Sounding Board, where Nepali citizens are given the opportunity to shadow EU staff as they engage with government officials, partner organizations, and communities. You said that they act as the eyes and ears when it comes to the issues and the needs of the Nepali youth. Could you tell us a bit about what you have learned through the youths that you have interacted with, or the youths have interacted with EU in general, about the current issues facing Nepal?
So this is a fantastic initiative we have that's very close to my heart. Mm-hmm. We're on the 3rd year, and the Youth Sounding Board is a group of 30 young people right now, and this year we have expanded to cover young people from all over the country, and for 1 year they are together with us, and I think it's a mutually beneficial interaction, because at the same time they are useful to us. As the name indicates, they're our sounding board.
Yes.
So we ask them, what do you think? What do you think of what we do? What do you think our priorities should be? How do you think we're doing? And in order to do that, they come to the delegation, but they also attend meetings with government officials, with international partners, with NGOs we work with, to understand what we're doing and to give their honest opinion. I think they learn a lot of it as well, of course. You know, it helps them grow, it helps them speak publicly, it helps them develop a voice. And the voice of young people is the voice of the future. In Nepal's traditional society and its respect for elder people, young people have not had this opportunity to speak out. And sometimes people are, you know, a bit uncomfortable.
We respect our elders a lot.
Yes, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that, you know, we shouldn't listen to the young people. They have, and when let me tell you very candidly, when I came in, I thought, oh, this is very interesting, youth sounding board. And then I had the first meeting with them, and I was just wowed because they had, you know, it wasn't just chit chat, it was very clear priorities. You know, the discrimination we suffer as women, the chapaudi, the, you know, dignified menstruation, all these issues that came out, you know, quite sensitive issues sometimes, that I heard from these young people, very structured, very clear. I was really impressed, and I haven't ceased to be impressed by them since. And they help us improve what we do.
Could you give an example of an issue raised by some of the youth that you paid attention to and that helped to improve the situation in Nepal?
I'll give you I've just spoken of dignified menstruation, so that's, you know, stuck in my mind. I was most impressed by one young man from our latest cohort who is campaigning for dignified menstruation. A man campaigning for that. Even I am amazed, you know.
It's very rare to find men in the feminist movement.
But it's so powerful.
Yes.
This is what we need. If we want to change things and provide equal opportunities and really work seriously on gender equality, we need the men involved in that.
I agree.
And this is bad. That it is, and it isn't it. I mean, for us, you know, it's in Europe. It hasn't been an issue for a long time, at least for the last 70 years. But in Nepal, it still is. To recognize it and to address it openly is very impressive.
Yes. Speaking of the issues raised by the youth, I myself, as I recently turned 19, I'm still a youth.
I'm so impressed you're asking me all these questions.
As someone who recently just graduated, I personally believe that one of the main issues that our country is facing, that I have seen growing up here in Nepal, is that our economy is extremely weak. We overly rely on imports. This could be our Achilles heel of sorts. Is there any advice you could give to the youths who want to start businesses or businesses currently starting up in Nepal to help better tackle such a situation so we aren't making imports a weakness?
So perhaps let me take a little step back. Absolutely, Nepal is in a vulnerable situation because it's landlocked and because its agriculture, but also its manufacturing, does not have that competitive edge.
Yes.
While I think, you know, there are segments of agriculture, of manufacturing, that are very specific, high quality Nepali products, where Nepal can have a competitive advantage, by and large, the situation is not going to change. So what's the answer? How do you look for opportunities? And it's about employment opportunities as well. It's about potential areas of economic growth. And that's one of the things we've been looking at. Why? Because it's shocking. The number of youth Nepal is losing every year.
Yes.
Young people who do not have the opportunities in Nepal will go outside. And you can't stop them doing that. Everybody's entitled to seek a better life.
Of course.
The only thing you can do is try and create opportunities in this country. So this is how we came to focus very much on investment and look at areas that are of potential. For me, we've spoken of hydropower, and that's a sector with a huge potential. It's also interesting because it provides green energy, green electricity. And another sector that has tremendous potential, and you look at the 2-3 last years, and it's a sector that has grown immensely in employment, in turnover, in exports, is the ICT sector, digital sector.
Yes.
And this creates a lot of employment. We have, the last figures I've seen, it's a sector that employs 60,000 people. I think, since then it's gone up.
Yes.
The exports of the ICT sector, I think now the latest figures I've seen is $800 million. This compares, it's huge.
Yes.
Yeah, and it compares with the manufacturing exports to Europe, at least, that are just 100 million. So there you can see the potential for growth. And ICT is borderless. It doesn't need transport. It doesn't care about transaction costs. It can grow in Nepal, and it is growing in Nepal. So I think what we need to do is support that sector with training. As I said, vocational training, that's something we're looking at very closely, but also with a good investment environment. This is what the sector needs for startups to be able to grow. This is what's also interesting is that the sector is still, I think it's starting to get some attention in Nepal. It's not on the radar screen of foreign investors. And this is a work we've been doing as European Union, is talking to our European companies, our European chambers of commerce, and explaining what the possibilities, what the opportunities are in Nepal.
Yes, that's a great ambition. I truly believe that this is something we could be successful at if we truly work hard for it. In the same article that you mentioned about the youth empowerment, you had also mentioned briefly about gender equality and social inclusion that are critical, important factors in the pursuit of sustainable development. Now, gender disparity, as you have mentioned earlier, is an issue that all women globally are facing. As a woman yourself, you have become an idol for many young women, young girls out there who are aspiring to become leaders in the future. Excuse me for my language. That being said, how can a country like Nepal achieve true gender equality that you speak of, so that young girls who aspire to be like you, to become better leaders of the future, achieve their dreams?
It's a big agenda. Let me say a few things about that. First of all, I think there needs to be a change of mindset. The gender equality agenda came up because of the discrimination, right? Yes. But related to that, it's only if you have suffered discrimination that you are sensitive to that fight, to that struggle, right? I always say I'm a latecomer to that agenda, to that awareness, because I come from a family that has always valued women. In particular, and it's a family of women, but even my father was a very strong supporter of women. So it took me a long time to understand that there were issues, and perhaps, took in my career, then some things didn't go wrong. I started realizing that maybe it was a gender inequality problem. But there's also a positive narrative to that. And it's the narrative that we are half of the population. We are not a minority. Mm-hmm. I don't like when we are associated, women and other minorities. No, sorry, we're not a minority.
Yes.
We're a majority, in fact. And a very capable and powerful if rightly used.
Yes.
How can a country mangle itself by, cutting off half of its population to achieve its full potential? You have absolutely to include women. That is the first step, and this is the mindset that needs to change also in the heads of men.
Yes.
There's that we work again in three pillars. The most obvious one, the one that needs to be eradicated, is the violence against women, gender-based violence. This is totally unacceptable against anyone, but it is very prevalent still in many countries, not only Nepal. And this is a scourge that we must fight against. But this is not enough. We have to empower women economically. And honestly, speaking from my own personal experience, financial independence is the best way of achieving confidence, of considering yourself, because that's the most important thing, to consider yourself as a woman as equal to others, as equal to a man. And this is what gives us the space to fulfill our potential. And then thirdly, because we have politicians, and they are the ones who represent us in public life, in public policies, the participation of women in political life, very important. Mm-hmm. Women tend to have this tendency of being quite shy, of diminishing their achievements or their potential, what they think they can do. Women are just as capable of men as men, sometimes more so. If you look at some areas, let me take microfinance, but also financial management. I know lots of managers of private companies who will only take a woman as a financial manager because they're more careful, more prudent, they think more long term, they have qualities that are precious, that are valuable for some areas of life. It's an excellent complement to the qualities that men bring. So these women also need to be represented in our political landscape and represent the issues we fight for. But let me say one last thing about the struggle for women empowerment and gender equality. It's not, never take it for granted. In our countries, even where we've had achievements, where we have equality, there's always, at some stage, a backlash. And so the attention to the gender equality agenda needs to be constant. In many countries, after COVID, we've seen a backsliding of an increase in violence, but also a taking away women's power. And so this is something that must remain a constant, have constant attention by all of us.
You had mentioned about financial independence for women, and yes, although it's empowering, to a great extent, there is the issue of gender pay gap, as you might be aware of. do you know of any methods that government policies could use to address gender pay gaps in different economies to ensure that women can truly be financially independent?
Again, the first thing is attention to the issue. We know, I mean, in some countries, it's an official policy. You don't discriminate. Same job, same pay. You know, it has to be formalized in policy. That's the basis. But then it must be implemented. So overseen, monitored, and it has to be an all of society effort.
There's a debate that frequently goes on amongst the youth with regards to representation of minorities such as women. Would you say...
Not a minority.
Yes. Would you say that there should be specifically reserved percentages within different organizations to help increase representation of women?
I'm divided about that. I know, on the one hand, I'm convinced you need some kind of affirmative action to ensure that, despite the resistance and the traditional societies, women acquire their rightful place. But we cannot only rely on that provision of
yes.
quotas or affirmative
action. It would no longer
action.
be meritocracy.
It has to be a meritocracy,
yes.
Because if you get too many incompetent women in reserved posts, it will create a backlash.
Yes.
So there has to be attention to merit, but there has to be attention to the spirit of the law or of the policy, which is we are trying to foster a favorable ecosystem where women can develop.
Speaking of social inclusivity, way back in 2018, before the pandemic, the EU had asked Nepal not to allocate proportional representation seats for the caste area, with the argument that it is already overrepresented. This was met with a lot of backlash from several political and intellectual figures within our nation. For example, our former Prime Minister had argued that the constitution written by the Nepali people does not include the word reservation, and it just states proportional inclusive reservation. Well, it has been more than 5 years now since that incident. In your opinion, has the new Nepali government become more socially inclusive since then for both the ethnic minorities as well as women?
So I think we need to, and I won't comment on what happened in 2018. I think it was quite fraught, and perhaps it was not expressed in the best possible way. But let's go back to the basics. The 2015 Constitution, is a very progressive constitution, and it recognizes the need for social inclusion.
Yes.
The need for gender equality, the need for inclusion of minorities, of caste minorities, of indigenous minorities. That's the spirit, and this was translated into quotas in the elections, right? If you look at the figures, my understanding is that the 2017 elections were pretty good, and did actually show a lot of progress in women's participation in political life. When we look at the following election, there's been a backsliding. And this is what I mean by we need to pay constant attention, because there will be resistance. It's absolutely inevitable. In all our countries, there is resistance. I'm not talking about the government. I'm talking about interest groups. I'm talking about certain men. There will be this pushback.
Yes.
And so it's important first of all, to identify it, diagnose what the problem is, and keep pushing the agenda, again, to follow the spirit of the law.
That being said, I would like to ask my final question. Because majority of our viewers are the youth of the future who will be leading us, would you have any message you would like to give to them?
First of all, I would say that they are wonderful. I am so impressed by the capacity of young people to at the same time hold within them what is the traditional Nepali system, culture, history, and to have one foot in truly Nepali society and have another foot in the modern world, in digital, in social media, in modern issues, and this ability to kind of to balance or to transition from one to the other is remarkable. This is what will shape, and this concept of the modern world is what will shape how our societies are in future, and Nepal is no exception. The second thing I would say is that I'm really sad that we are losing so many youths in this country, because it's gone beyond the let's look for better opportunities. It's become a fashion. If you don't migrate, you're a loser. That's not true. This country has so much to offer, and it needs, but it can only achieve its true potential if it has its vital force within. And this vital force is the youth. So, I mean, we in the European Union, we're working very hard to try and demonstrate that, to show that there's a lot of energy, a lot of potential in the private sector, in civil society, in the young organizations, the startups, and to make this fashionable. We have to make it fashionable for people to come back to Nepal and build a better society.
Thank you for your insightful words. As now we have come to the end of the episode, I have a small token of appreciation for all of the work that you've given us. At the front, you will find Ad Meliora written. In Latin, it means towards a brighter future.
Yes. Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful for that.